and welcome to this week's episode of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter guide you, and occasional guests guide you through the world of online communications in a show where we talk tech, a show which is the brainchild of the late great internet evangelist John Popham. And we're delighted to be joined this morning by Shirley Ayres. And as we usually do on our program, we ask people how the weather is where they are. So I'm in Birmingham and it's kind of grey and it's been raining, but I did manage to get out for a walk this morning. Shirley, how are you and how's the weather where you are?
Grey and raining, and I haven't yet been out for my walk.
And whereabouts in the country are you, Shirley?
I'm currently in Devon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Sweyn, how are you and how's the weather where you are?
In Orkney, the weather is grey and rainy, as it is in Devon, it would seem.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a national picture there.
Yes.
Okay. So we are delighted to have Shirley, and I'll introduce her more fully in a few minutes, but we'll, as usual, go into kind of the special days that we're celebrating around this time of year. And of course, today is the 21st of December, winter solstice. And this is an astronomical phenomenon that marks the shortest day and the longest night of the year. And in the Northern Hemisphere, the winter solstice occurs on 21st or 22nd of December, where the sun shines directly over the Tropic of Capricorn. And interestingly, from my point of view, Newgrange, located in County Meath in the Republic of Ireland, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, was built around 3200 BC, 500 years before the pyramids in Egypt and more than 1,000 years before Stonehenge. And at sunrise, on the shortest day of the year, for 17 minutes, direct sunlight can enter the Newgrange monument, not through the doorway, but through the specially contrived small opening above the entrance, known as the roof box, gradually illuminating the entire chamber. And for people who want to see this live, it is being live streamed from Newgrange. And if you look online, you can find various links to that, including as well, if you miss it live, you can see it on YouTube. And of course, this week also is on the 25th of December, on Friday, is Christmas Day. And this celebrates the birth of Jesus Christ, who Christians believe is the Son of God. And his birthday is unknown because there's so little information about his early life and disagreement among scholars on when he was born. But Christians celebrate Jesus' birthday on the 25th, and Orthodox Christians celebrate Christmas Day on or near January 7th. The word Christmas comes from the Old English Christus Messe, or the Mass of Christ. It is likely the Christmas date of December 25th was chosen to offset the pagan celebrations of Saturnalia and Natalis Invicti. It's also possible that the celebration of the birth of the true light of the world was set at the time of the December solstice, because this is when the days in the Northern Hemisphere begin to grow longer. Christmas holiday customs derive from various cultures, including Teutonic, Celtic, Roman, West Asian, and Christian. So there's some information about what's happening around this time of year. And so, as I said earlier, we're delighted to welcome Shirley Ayres to our program this time. And Shirley, I'll give you a bit of introduction of things I've been able to find out about you on the internet, and you're welcome then to add anything to that. Shirley is a qualified social worker and marketer who has worked across the care sector for over 35 years. Shirley has extensive experience of helping organizations and individuals to understand the value and importance of digital technology and social media. She works with organizations excited about the potential of digital technology to just transform how services are delivered. She's a visionary and strategic thinker, providing unique perspectives which promote collaboration and partnerships across the public, private, and not-for-profit sector, and has written extensively about the value of social technology to support community well-being, and has a particular interest in demonstrating social impact. She's the author of The Click Guide to Dementia, The Long-Term Care Revolution, and Can Online Innovations Enhance Social Care? You're very welcome to the show, Shirley, and we're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Please add anything to that you'd like to.
The only thing I'll add is that they were broadcasting the Stonehenge solstice online, which I watched this morning, which was absolutely delightful.
Wonderful.
It's nice. All this stuff that you can have a look at now online.
Isn't it brilliant?
It's a very palpable demonstration of what we can access and what is available for us now, which I think is still incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. Well, Shirley, we usually like to hear about when we have our guests on about their kind of how they get started in their career being online and being digital. So please tell us a bit about how you got started in this and what you are doing right now.
Right, how did I get started? I was doing a master's in marketing, and I was doing it part-time. It was going to take a long time to do, so my then tutor suggested that rather than doing something that was very social welfare orientated, I looked for something that was completely outside the box. And so my marketing dissertation was on artificial constructs and human relationships, the phenomena of internet dating. And it was fascinating because this was in 2000, 2003. So it was the start of, and I was particularly interested in how older people were using the internet and what their experiences were. But the key thing that it showed to me was how powerful the internet was going to become, about human interactions and how we needed to change, and how the connections were going to be very important. And it was a fun subject as well. Fascinating insights. I think some of them are still relevant 15 years later, quite honestly. But yeah, so that's how my interest started. And I then went on to explore what the implications might be for communication within the social sector. And hey, there's this strange thing about the social sector. The word is in being social. So I have followed with great interest what's happened with the development of digital technology and how individuals and communities have adapted. And I suppose the one observation I would make, what prompted us to write the Click Guides to Dementia, Aging Well, Adults and Children's Social Care, was an awareness that there is an enormous amount going on and people just don't know about it. And one of the things that John and I bonded over when we first met, I realized it was in 2013, was a frustration that at that time, the default position for telling people, showing people how to access the internet was to sit them in front of a computer and take them through a lot of exercises about accessing the internet. And what we both believed was that to excite people about technology, you had to find out what they were interested in and show them how they could access it online. And that's a philosophy that kept us bonded for many years. And the other thing that we both felt strongly about was frugal innovation. You don't need big, shiny, expensive projects. What you need is stuff at a community level. And John was such a creative person in terms of seeing how you can get stuff out there. And he was, in fact, one of my go-to people for basic. I'm not a digital technologist expert. I'm a communications expert, and so I would always ask him, and he always responded very promptly. Oh, what's this about? Well, what's the best way to do X, Y, and Z? And in 2014, he, along with a lot of other people who now have very, very good reputations, who are at the start of their journey, we all came together in Sittingbourne in Kent to run a one-day workshop which brought together people from across the social sector and civil society to actually look at care in the digital age. And John videoed it all, and I suspect it's probably still all online. So he was a consummate professional, but he also had a lot of compassion and care. And he was committed, as I'm sure we all know, to getting the message out there that, hey, this has some benefit for all of us.
So who might are the other people who were there in 2014? We might have, are they still around, involved in this kind of world?
Yes. Well, it was a lovely collection of people, and everybody generously donated their time to come along and be with us. So there were people like Paul Taylor, Paul Bromford, Chris Bolton, What's the Point, Jill Phillips, Who's Shoes, Stu Arnott, who I used to do the Disruptive Social Care podcasts with, and who set up Mindings. Dominic Campbell came and spoke. I mean, it was a very wide selection of people, and it was exciting. It was full of energy, and we did a couple more of those across the country. But, as John and I frequently found, innovation, if you're a small company, is very hard to get funded. Plenty of money to write reports, ad nauseum that people don't read, but actually getting people together and showing them how they can use the internet it's not sexy, it's not exciting. And that makes me very sorrowful, but was a reason why we published the click guides, because we wanted to highlight the volume of good resources, not just websites, but apps and lots of things that were going on that we thought would improve the quality of people's lives. And I mean, it works. We've had a lot of incredible feedback on all of them. I'm in the middle of updating them. It's a slow process because I keep getting distracted by other things that I'm doing. So I have about 5 key projects that I'm working on at the moment.
All right. And do you want to say a bit about them?
They're quite diverse. I mean, apart from updating all our click guides, I'm also working with a group of people currently named the Tribe to actually consider alternatives to long-term care. You mentioned that I wrote the long-term care, why we need a long-term care revolution paper, which is actually saying, and especially in the light of what's happened with COVID, that we desperately need alternatives to institutional care. I have no interest in being institutionalized or warehoused, end of. So there is a real disconnect between what people want and what is available. And I'm working with an inspiring group of people to actually address that this year. And I'm also working with Mervyn Eastman and Dawn Garrett from the Royal College of Nursing, and Merv as sort of a change agent. And we are developing a provocation paper looking at sexuality and intimacy in later life, because it's an ignored subject. And if you think you have 3 generations of older people, and strangely, people do not lose their interest and appetite for sex when they suddenly reach the magical age of 60. So we're raising the profile on that.
Excellent. And are you in touch with people internationally on that?
I am on some things. I mean, on other things, it's quite a bit. I mean, we're writing a provocation paper from a very diverse group of angles, everything from sex robots through to sex workers in later life. And so, I mean, I think this for us is the start of the conversation, putting out a provocation paper. And then who knows where it will go from there. But I think a lot of us feel it's not something that should be either put in the cupboard or ignored, because it's an important part of all of our lives.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think if nothing else, lockdown has shown us so many things, but the importance of contact with people. I know myself, I miss terribly not having physical contact with, I'm a real hugger. So when I meet people, I want to hug them, and I can't do that now. And it's a real difficulty for me. Yeah. So what kind of things have you noticed since lockdown started around digital, around communications and social? What do you think has changed?
I think there have been some enormous efforts by organisations, like CAST, and by We the Catalysts and the Lottery Fund, in supporting a lot more charities to get online, which I think is really good. I mean, Dan commissioned me to write the online innovations and social care paper, and that was 7-8 years ago. And Mary McKenna is also involved with that. So I think that has been incredibly interesting. I think I remember writing a paper, writing on my blog in 2013 about should all residential homes provide internet access for residents and staff, and I got an amazing reaction then, which is the reasons why it couldn't happen. So it's good to see. Yes, for a whole range of reasons. Yes, the blog still stands, but so clearly the time wasn't right. Although I did, I did work with care homes, and I said to them, look, whether you like it or not, this is not going to go away.
Yeah.
And you have actually got to take responsibility, but it isn't just about the residents, it's about your staff as well. And so there have been, one of the problems is that we have a lot of short-term funded projects, so they're never embedded.
Yeah. I find that.
What do you think? What do you think of the of projects like Connecting Scotland, the English one, which is called some .now.
Devices.now.
Devices.now, and also there's a lot. Do you think that? I mean, what has struck us is is the inclusion, at last, you might say, of the heading support and digital champion training. Do you think that's gone far enough in those projects, or is there something missing that we should still be doing that's not yet there?
I'd have to read up on it. I mean, one of the things I've noticed is that people seem reluctant to learn from experience, whether it's a success or a failure. So all over the UK, there are really interesting projects going on about digital inclusion, whether it's from, how can we get hold of a whole load of laptops and give them to people, through to, yes, we're doing this really interesting, we're going to train people to become social reporters. But rather than, there is no one coordinating all of these initiatives so that other people can, rather than keep inventing the wheel, can actually say, okay, we're going to learn this from these people and this from these people. And in fairness to the We Are Catalysts stuff, they actually they are sharing what they're learning. And so I think that's important, that they're focusing on the charity sector.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but I think it needs to go wider than that.
Well, interestingly, on the 11th of December, the Leeds City Council and Croydon City Council launched a digital inclusion toolkit, which was funded by the MHCLG, which is starting to bring together projects from around the country, and they are trying to. It's the GDS format, so you'll recognise the website. Look if you go online and have a look at it, digitalinclusionkit.org, I think. And so they are trying to bring together some of the learning. And I know the Good Things Foundation is also starting to bring together, sharing the learning as well. So there are some efforts, but as you say, there's no one overall coordination effort that we can guide people towards, and which is partly why, during our program, we highlight stories that we've read about what's happening. So, the Dr. Tech Show could be seen as a way of bringing together this information as well. I think John could see that.
I think we covered that Leeds and Croydon project before, but there's
yes, yeah.
I mean, I think what I would say, I mean, and I think it's great, but I could probably point to about 10 digital inclusion toolkits that people have asked me to look at. And I think that's we've got to do this because no one's doing it. And it's a bit like when I work with startups in the tech industry. And one of the questions I ask them is, well, who's your competition? Oh, no, what we're doing is unique. And
it's totally unique.
Yeah.
You say, well, unless you've got a USP, then let me tell you, and carers is a particular one that people get fond of. Oh, there's 6.5 informal family carers. Well, what we can do is we can help them connect with each other. And I think, look at the 15 projects that haven't worked, and I'll explain why they haven't worked. I think the reality about a lot of the technology, especially in health and care, what people don't realize is that if they are going to commission your new shiny and innovative app, whatever, they're going to have to decommission something else. So you have to make a case, and that requires you to have an evidence base. And that's the problem. The funding, there's funding there used to be funding to sort of start something off up to about 200,000. If you proved your success, you could get funding over $1 million. It was that bit in the middle that wasn't funded properly, unless you were a big organization and you made a plausible case. Whether it was actually reality is a different matter entirely.
Yeah, you referred to a blog post that you wrote about 2014 or something, and that's still current. And I, like you, I have blog posts that I go back, and I think, some of us are kind of before our time. So I think Anne McCrossan, another person who has written brilliantly about in this space, and those blog posts are still important for now, and we need to kind of resurrect some of them, I think, to remind people that there is good thinking going on there. And I think it's about working in the open, isn't it? And that reminds me, Shirley, so we first met at a LASA meeting in London in 2011 or 12, which was about open data. And I think the transparency that some of us demonstrate isn't common, and that's an issue for me.
I think it is for a lot of people, especially with the entrepreneurial tech industry who are going to discover the next Facebook. This issue of IP actually has never been fully addressed. I mean, it's a bit like having a hackathon, and you have 4 or 5 people there. So who then has the IP if they develop something? so I mean, I think there is sometimes a naivety, but I mean, one of the best examples for me of organizations being open and transparent is Paul Taylor and the Bromford Lab, because they have everything up there, and they've talked about not only their things that have been successful, but their failures. And in fact, I ran with Paul and with Chris Bolton and the failure doctor. Her name's escaped me. She's a very good friend of mine. How embarrassing. Anyway, we ran a series of workshops on strategies about learning from failure. And I think that's the other part of it. People don't want to admit that it hasn't worked. And sometimes the best learning is when something hasn't worked. But funders, they're getting more flexible. But I mean, what people have wanted over the years is outputs rather than outcomes.
Yeah.
So, we produced, sort of 500 copies of this report. Well, yeah, but what impact did they have? And that's, you mentioned I am very keen on impact.
4 of them are red. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what difference has it made?
You'll know that Cassie Robinson is working with the National Lottery Community Fund now, and I think that has made a big difference. Her mindset over everything. Yeah.
I think she has been incredibly influential. I think her posts are very insightful and thoughtful.
Yeah.
I mean, what I also find one of the interesting things is that the social space now is very crowded. And it's sort of, I'm going to get online because, everybody should have a basic website, but actually don't put all bells and whistles on it, because I've reviewed hundreds, thousands of digital resources for our books, and I find a depressing amount are not at all user friendly, but they were seduced by the bright and the shiny. We need all of this. No, you don't. You need a stripped back site that people could easily access.
I'm sure you've met your share of tech people as well, who kind of think they have discovered something new for charities that we've tried and hasn't worked, or we've been working on, and it has been a bit frustrating for me since lockdown started to find people reinventing. The media trust has been reinvented at least once, and I'm sure others have as well, and it's a bit frustrating, because what you want is for them to use their technology in the with the existing organizations to help them. That would be my hope for them.
I think it's interesting, because it really was, and that's I did try to track this when I was asked about what support is being given to people, and so you're then looking all over the UK for good examples, and they just kept coming fast and furious, but none of them were coordinated. And so you've still got this sort of element of unless it's invented here, we're not going to accept it or moderate it or shape it to our thing. That's the importance of open data and open source software as well, isn't it? That people adapt it to their own circumstances.
Yeah. I am pleased to say that the Tech for Good community is organising itself in the UK now, and organisers are starting to come together. Rebecca Ray Evans is coordinating has been coordinating a few sessions. We've already had a few sessions online using Miro boards and Jam boards and all kinds of things that people are getting their heads around. But these are people who are kind of used to working together and who are prepared to do something collaborative without having to worry too much at the moment about the IP, and they just want to help people and get stuff out there. What kind of referring back to kind of your things you've done with John, have you got any particular memories of events you've been at together, or things that you really enjoy doing with him?
I think I think the Care in the Digital Age one, where we had 150 people at a hotel in Sittingbourne, supported by Kent County Council. I mean, a lot of good people there saying we want to do this. The thing about John, he was incredibly reliable. He knew his stuff and he delivered. And, it's still a joy to watch things that he has recorded. And that was always, he was very trustworthy. And, and certainly I think it must have been around 2014, 15, when you have these huge organizations like the NHS or various other very well-funded organizations who would put events on and didn't record them. And so John and I would both ask her, okay, so why aren't, if this is supposed to be for the public, then why aren't you broadcasting it live? Oh, well, this is really expensive. And I'd say, well, no, ask John. We'll do it for you at a competitive rate. You've seen his stuff online. We commission you to filming with us, and it doesn't have to cost you thousands of pounds. What are you talking about? And so, yes, I like to promote John. And I think I loved when he came up with these new ideas and thought about things when he wanted to get a what was it, VW sponsored to go around to little villages and help people get online, but he could never get the funding for it. And
that's right. That was a
frustrating thing about this for me and for him, is actually getting the funding.
I never actually met John face to face, only across a screen, but I felt I knew him quite well, and he, as you say, so reliable, so informative, so helpful. And I remember his project that he invented to visit Orkney when we had an event here in 2012. He was going to trying to get funding to come up with 2 or 3 people with a camper van all through the UK and give digital surgeries all the way north from Huddersfield to Orkney. And it was such a beautiful idea. But we couldn't for the life of us get any funding for it. So, and then he got some paid work for the same weekend, so he had to go off and do that. So
and that, I think, we this, if you come up with an idea for a new and shiny app, 25 grand. What John was asking for was much less and had a lot more impact. And so I think that's where it went out of kilter. And in fact, I was thinking about a post, and I quoted it recently, that Mark Brown wrote, probably around 2014. We were all in full flow. He was also at the Care of the Digital Age conference, which was actually beware the shiny snake oil salesman.
That's wild, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, that's a phenomenon that goes way back, far back into the past, before social media, to do with all technical things from about Cartwheel onwards, I suspect.
So I do feel sad that John had such difficulty getting funding for innovative projects that were really going to make an impact. Whereas, other things were funded and went nowhere. But apart from that, John was just very good company. I mean,
he was.
He was, and he was a very kind and compassionate man. I loved him.
Yeah, he was visionary, like many of you. You're kind of, I would think you Shirley and others, kind of been visionary before your time. Does it feel frustrating now to see people coming along and sort of not knowing the history really of what's gone before?
I think a lot of organizations have lost the memory of the path they've come on. And in fact, Chris Bolton, What's the Point, is very good on writing about that. I mean, when I felt frustrated, I just withdrew for a couple of years. I thought, I'm exhausted. I'm not personally responsible for the state of social care or the lack of adoption of digital technology in the UK, and I'm going to go off and do something else. So, I've always believed in mentoring younger people, and I think the thing that fascinates me most of all, because obviously I've been around quite a long time, is that people I first met 10 years ago come up to me, or used to come up to me at conferences and say, "Oh, do you remember when I started and you said X?" That possibly makes me feel my age, but I mean, it's also delightful to see where people have progressed to and how people are getting on. So, I think if you're frustrated, it's best to step away and do something completely different, personally, and then come back with renewed energy. Admittedly, it's taken me about 5 years to do that, but I think for me, right, the one plus of the lockdown has been that I have been able to attend virtually a range of conferences that I would never have been able to attend in real life, because they've been all over the world. And to do a pick and mix on, well, that looks interesting, I'll just go listen to the financial services talking about this, or organizations doing that. I mean, I do get a lot of invitations to conferences, so I am quite selective about what I go to.
Right.
And some of them have learned no lessons at all being on Zoom. If you're boring, you're boring. Zoom does not make you suddenly exciting and interesting.
Oh yes, there's been some beautiful examples of that. But there's also been, I mean, for me, being able to attend things like that during lockdown has been a total revelation. It's been what I've been arguing for many, many years. Here I am, as it stuck on an island in the North Sea, with travel being very expensive in time or in money or both. Please, can you just have John pop him along to your event and just let him sit in a corner with his phone, live stream it, please?
Yes.
Oh, well, no, that's all terrifically complicated, as you were saying earlier. But the range of quality of some of these sudden online events has been staggering. For some, it's as if they've just literally never thought that this might be a possibility before, and they're just trying to make it up from scratch. Others, on the other hand, have been trying to get a critical mass going for years, and are finally trying to get to put some of their ideas into practice. I always point for people who are trying to learn about how run-of-the-mill, how embedded this can become in your way of working. I always point to the University of the Highlands and Islands, who have for 30 years done an enormous amount of what is now called blended learning through video and multi-point video, and it's just embedded. It's just how they work. You can attend virtually any lecture from virtually any one of their sites or from home now. And they've been doing that for 20 years. They're still there just doing it. You know? And you sometimes think, when you have the conversations with people who you want to try and encourage to take a step in that direction, you would think that it's like trying to send somebody to Mars. It's just not that complicated or difficult. Get on with it. Ask the people who know.
I think maybe part of it isn't about the complication, it's about people's egos, or how
Part
will
of
I,
it is.
you know, and you know, it was very interesting actually. This year I was invited to present at an international conference, online conference for the Institute of Engineers and Technologists, and that was fascinating. The questions that they came up with, and the whole event was so well produced. Even though we all went over our time, which well, if it's interesting, I don't mind. It's just when people, you know, still produce these heavy PowerPoint slides that you can't read, that are boring. Because I was commenting to.
Yes, you couldn't read them when they were, and you certainly can't read them on your 12-inch screen.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that what I discovered for me is I can't cope with 2-day conferences. Probably my attention span will stretch to about a day, as long as I have breaks in between. But you know, some of them, they just went from one speaker to another speaker to another speaker, with and I even though, you know, physically you're not there, it was exhausting. You know, because at least on a normal conference, you can get out and have a cup of tea and a biscuit and talk.
That's right. People. It's very, yeah. I think there's definitely a case like that, and have a mobile one that you can just wander about with if it's into more like radio.
Well,
if there's a session you can listen to more like radio. I'm sitting like this, and now I'm getting just about my limit now, and we're not even halfway. Oh, so we are halfway through. But it does somehow work on you in a very intense way that just being in a room around many people, for most people anyway, doesn't have the same wearing effect.
I think I would say for the future about conferences that 10 minutes 10 tweets. Any more than that, then give people a link to a site, because my top tip for conferences now, and people laugh at this, is when I need to go for a cup of tea and on all day conference, I put this over my camera and wander off and make the tea. This.
What is? Sorry, I'm missing.
Again,
it's a piece of it's a.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's elastoplast or tape or something. No way. I think, I mean, even the best they still need to work more on how it all works and this, how you can do things beforehand and afterwards, and engage people beyond simply the 45-minute talk with a theoretical 12 minutes questions, which we don't have time for.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I always say to people, for me, the event is the start of a longer conversation.
Yeah.
It isn't the end. I come
Yeah.
here, I present, and that's it. I go away. And I think people who mistakenly think they can shove it all in on a day are wasting many opportunities, because that's where social media comes into its own. You know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If it's
Definitely.
interesting, people have useful things to say. That's how I judge it. Have I learned something new?
Yeah, definitely. So what if you're recommending, if you're, you know, if somebody's starting off new on social media, Shirley, what do you recommend to them now?
I'd recommend they have a look at the slide decks that Paul Taylor and I put together out of sheer frustration. Well, about starting on social media, about social media and events, you know, all very, but also, I mean, movingly, for my 63rd birthday, Paul put together a slide deck of people that I knew and respected and loved, and John Popham's was one of the comments in there, but I haven't had the chance to have a look at it and put it out. But I mean, that was sort of saying to people, well, who I, you know, what's your top tip for people using social media? So I might actually put them all out again. I mean, just because they're really good.
That would be really nice, yeah. Because I think
Yes.
some people
Great.
are still getting started in this, and
Of course they are.
you know, a lot of us are kind of down the line, and we forget sometimes what it was like to be getting started. And you know, it's good to, I think, to think of others, especially older people, I think, who you know, who are really can struggle a lot more than younger people.
I suppose what I would argue is that they struggle because the technology and the design stuff isn't good enough.
Yes, I agree. Please say more about that.
I don't know, you know. I mean, it's as I constantly explain to people, I am not a digital technologist. I am a person who communicates and who sees the value and benefits, but also the downfalls of technology and being social. And what I think is even more marked today is because the social space is so crowded. If people are not prepared to be social and to share and to be generous, then yeah, you know, I mean, they'll get a certain amount of followers. But if you want to keep a dedicated audience, start with thinking about, you know, who over time you build it slowly and you share things that are of value and interest. And I still see lots of organizations who just only ever talk about themselves.
Yeah.
You know, they don't, you know, and that's one of the problems about, you know, to me, social should be about sharing learning, sharing experiences, coming together. And that I think is my main observation about the social sector not being that social. You know, yes, I'm sure, you know, and Paul Taylor and I worked out a ratio. I think we reckoned it was probably 2 of your own tweets to 3 about other people and other things and other interests.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think my top tip is find good people to follow, because they will lead you to sources of information and resources that you wouldn't otherwise be aware of. Make lists, because once you get past a certain point,
absolutely.
It's actually quite difficult to keep it.
I'm a big list keeper. Yeah, on my Twitter.
I need to get my lists organised, but I've been saying that for 10 years. So.
Yeah. Well, Stan, if it's any consolation, I've been looking at lists that I set up in 2011 and thinking, are they still relevant? Oh, yes. You know, I sometimes get asked how many of my followers I've actually met in real life, because that's
that's a measure. As if
that should be a metric, really, shouldn't it? Or something
I did a calculation and reckoned I've probably met over the years about 3,000 people at conferences and events, and you know, to actually shake their hand or hit with them. But the most significant thing for me is that the people that I work closely with in the Connected Care Network, which is people like Paul Taylor, Chris Bolton, Mark Brown, I originally met online, and then we met in person.
That's
but
right.
you know, we'd already got a connection. And that is really powerful. There's a possibility I might have met them, but it's a marvelous way to meet lots of new and interesting people. I love it.
It sure
Yeah.
is.
Have you met any new and interesting people this year?
Yes, I have. Not in real life, but from across the board.
Yeah.
I did a course with the Centre for Investigative Journalism.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Which was absolutely an online course over 4 weeks, and with an international audience, and was very impressed with the tutors on the course. I mean, I think it was partly about, there is a framework for investigative reporting, and I wanted to learn more about it, because I think, what has happened in the last 9 months has been quite horrifying in terms of the lack of transparency and accountability for the expenditure of billions of pounds.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting to find ways of tracking, where's the money going, who's involved with it, etc. I mean, and it's a natural, as a social worker, it's a natural curiosity to find out more.
Sure.
So yes, I have. Yes, I have met more interesting people, but also connected with people who I haven't spoken to for years. Come back into.
It's kind of more available. You're not less busy. You're just more interactive somehow.
I think so.
I find anyway.
Yes.
The main group of people I think that I've met during lockdown has been the One Team Gov people who've been having their Wednesday breakfasts in London for 4 years or something. But I've never been able, strangely enough, to get to London for breakfast. But their Wednesday breakfasts online, able to go quite routinely, and a whole we've been bored in with a whole pile of people who had been really good hour-long agile lean coffee type style event, and people some of whom I'd heard of as Twitter people, so they suddenly become human because you're able to have a chat with them. It's been.
I don't know if you know any of those people, Shirley. James Cattell or Kid Collingwood, would be two of the.
I know James from when I attended some of the big events, which escaped me.
UK Gov Camp and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Sarah Baskerville, of course, would have been involved. Yeah.
I'll tell you another interesting group called WantComs, and that's communications people in think tanks.
Yeah.
And they have some really, really interesting speakers, and they have always welcomed me to their meetings because they talk about a lot of great things. So some sort of little groups, really, it adds value. When they had they also had breakfast meetings, which I would attend, and the refreshments were really good. But more than that, they also had some really good speakers. But I mean, the One Gov, in a sense, they have really kept that legacy going of GovCamp, haven't they?
Yes, they have, and it's good to see it happening. I've got WantComs here. 5 things we learned about reaching audiences in the new normal. That's the one, yeah. Yeah. I had heard of them before, but I hadn't heard of them recently, so it's good to be reminded of.
I've not heard of them before.
Yeah.
So have a look at that.
Yeah. So yes, I think it remains challenging and uncertain times. But what fascinates me is how things that people said were not possible suddenly are possible. And this is specifically for care homes for me, and their use of technology and connecting people up after all the resistance I encountered when I suggested it might be a good idea. And in fact, in the long-term care revolution paper that I was commissioned to write for Innovate UK, I suggested that should actually be one of the standards the Care Quality Commission should measure homes against.
Absolutely.
How, whether they've got digital technology, how they support residents to use it, and how they train staff to support residents to use it. It's not,
Surely
I'm not
this,
saying it should replace human contact, but there isn't the human contact at the moment.
No.
unless, we actually started taking it one stage further and started thinking about avatars and different ways of using it.
Sure. Yeah. Pauline's dropped off the call. I think she's rejoining. But yes, I mean, is she going to make it back?
Yes, I'm here.
This is the
I'm here.
jeopardy of
Sorry
live
about
broadcasting. Hooray!
So exciting.
That's what
So
makes
you're saying about
and human.
you're saying, Shirley, about trying to perhaps think about getting how care home providers allow their users to the residents to use technology and what they get out of it, and try and get that as part of what's inspected or part of the criteria for a good service. I think that's a common, that's a kind of common ambition. I think it's a really good way of embedding either in professional practice or inspection criteria or whatever. And I think that's one way that those of us who have tried to learn in a more general way about stuff can actually embed the knowledge in a sector. So it's good to hear that one.
I think what fascinates me with, for example, over 55 accommodation, where new accommodation being built, where they don't offer broadband access as a sort of a standard, but they do have a charging point for your electric mobility scooter.
Yes. What's that about? Or car? Yeah, it's bizarre. Yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated to hear about your work in kind of accommodations or kind of living for older people, especially because I've been involved in the Women's Network in Birmingham for some years, and we've looked at getting older, and I want to live with women largely, I think, who have exciting lives and who aren't dead until they're dead. It's just like I don't want to be warehoused, like you said, Shirley. I want to live a full life, connected, internationally and locally, for as long as I can.
I think a lot of us feel that, I mean, but the reality is we have three generations. I mean, we've got the sort of the baby boomers, the sort of 60s, early 70s. You've got the 70s to 80s, and then you've got the sort of the 80s onwards. And we all have different life experiences, expectations, aspirations. Whereas the default position for any, I have written about who is this mysterious tribe called the elderly, because I'm slightly puzzled why everybody over 65 should be classified as the elderly. And the lack of choices. I mean, my later life vision, I want to live in a smart, small home that is obviously has the sort of basics of internet access, but also has room for my personal robot, my virtual assistant, and access to driverless cars. And there is nowhere in this country that offers that. And the interesting thing when I talk to people about this, I mean, because for people who don't want to spend a lot of money on accommodation, who are happy to live in a small space so that they've got the freedom to travel, and also it should be intergenerational. The design should be so cool that my grandson wants to live there too.
Yeah.
And you can do that, with all the modern building materials, modular housing, small units, well designed, not some pokey little place, but I mean, really well designed. They're doing it in other countries. And so why aren't we doing it here?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the cost of residential care, it's phenomenal. For what? We really have to challenge what is happening, because the care home industry is 10.5, 11 billion plus pounds. And I don't see that people in a lot of the places are getting value for money. And we've seen that the commodification of care is one of the major scandals of our time, in my view. And there are options. The co-housing option that has happened in Barnet. I mean, we cite some of the options we have discovered in our Click Guide to Aging Well. But so yeah, I think it's a big challenge, because there's a lot of vested interests who are quite happy to maintain the status quo, and because decisions about institutional care are often made in a crisis.
Yeah.
With people not having the information, or because there are no options. I mean, I say to some insurance providers, well, why should anybody be motivated into saving for long-term care when this is all that's on offer? quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
It's been interesting. I'm sure you've heard since lockdown started, and kind of the number of things that can be done online now that people, disabled people especially, were told, oh, that's not possible. We can't do our event online. We can't, make things accessible, blah blah blah, for some reason. Now all of a sudden everything is more, much more accessible, and similarly in this case. We had a couple of stories, Shirley, if you don't mind, that we can refer to. And one of them was, we heard that the Government Education Committee on the 19th of December published a plan for an adult skills and lifelong learning revolution. And when I read this out to my colleague and partner, he said, "Oh, another one."
Yep.
It's not the first time they've published this, but they're including this a section on digital skills, recognizing, as we're kind of all familiar with the data at the moment, the 9 million adults in the UK lack basic digital skills. They're more necessary than ever before and vital for employability and productivity. So from August 2020, the Department of Education introduced a new digital skills entitlement, enabling adults with low or no digital skills to undertake a fully funded course, which is fine as long as the courses are available, of course. And also the budget hasn't changed. So it's great to have this initiative, but if you're not putting any more money into it, the adult education budgets, as far as I know, are kind of, and it says in this report, are already fully spent. So it's great to see an initiative, but every initiative like this needs to have funding.
I have a question actually for the both of you, right? I mean, I do some one-to-one training with older adults who want to get online, and I have gone through a lot of the online digital courses, and none of them strike me as for today. They are boring, they are repetitive, they are slow. The only one that I did think was interesting was the I think it was the idea one with the skills levels. But so many of them, they just they don't excite me, or they don't excite the people. I've sat down with people who really lack confidence, and I don't think their confidence levels have improved. And so, do you know of any really good basic digital skills courses, apart from the ones that are online that everybody promotes, that aren't actually that exciting? Because you have to excite people.
Yeah, we've had some good speakers on here who are doing some of that with people. Paul Clayton in London, and Casper Kennerdale we had on recently. I like Digital Unite training. I think that's got some potential. But SCVO have done an awful lot since lockdown. But I think it's with people at a higher up level. My preference is to work with people who are just getting started, and like you say, to teach them something they want to know. They want to know.
Yeah.
Rather than
I
make them work through manuals.
I think it all comes back to it earlier, Shirley, about trying to find out what interests people and give them a route to it that uses. I think anything that tries to be a generic training course for getting online or something like that it's very hard to make that genuinely interesting, because what people want to do is talk to other people or find information about a certain subject, thing like that. They don't. A lot of people just don't see the point, don't understand about what this getting online thing actually would do for them. That's the key. Everybody that we've spoken to, I think, on the program, the key is those who start where the individual is are the people who actually make progress and go.
I mean, it's interesting, Pauline, that you mentioned Digital Unite, because I mean that was one of the ones, and we looked at about 10 different programs that at least scored relatively well. But the rest of them, and I don't know how much money was expended on them, but I mean, they to me, they weren't good enough to get someone excited, about, hey, you want to get online to do your online banking? Maybe there's something I'm more interested in. Can I find people who play Scrabble at 3 o'clock in the morning, or,
That's more like it.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested in developing something like that, because I do think, I'm meeting more people who are a bit frustrated, and the quality of stuff has to be raised up, because otherwise we are just going to see people looking dead-eyed and kind of trying to work through a manual just to get to something that does entertain them a bit more.
Yeah, I think it needs to be rethought. I think, you know, the new normal has to include training and learning that is much more customized to people rather than these bog standard. Yeah, I mean, okay, they're cheaper to do, but I mean, if they're not being effective, then to me, they're a waste of time and a waste of my time when I'm sitting down with people trying to encourage them to get online.
Yeah.
So
it was
if you come
interesting.
across any, please let me know.
I saw a Twitter exchange you had with John actually on this in August. You said, wouldn't it be great if we had a foundation which would offer a similar scheme for older adults in the UK, which was because John was tweeting about Dreamweaver donating Facebook portals to hundreds of Omaha Metro seniors.
Yes.
And he then said, in response to your remark about the foundation, what we need is a closely networked series of local organizations who can receive donated tech, clean and recycle secondhand stuff, and test to see what tech is appropriate to individual users. And then he suggested complementing them with YouTube videos of what older people want to do, which I think would work quite well. And we've had somebody on here from Reboot, which is a project about doing just that, cleaning up available tech and making it more available to other people who want it. And that's our video of that show has had about 100 users, so we can see more people are interested in getting involved in projects like that. But it's, as you say, the overall responsibility for it is not concentrated in one place, so it's difficult to find some of the best stuff. We notice also a story that Ofcom said that millions in the UK are struggling to pay internet and phone bills, which is good to see Ofcom recognising that. But the telecoms companies aren't going to give away what they feel is their market share. But Ofcom is saying that there may be a need for some regulation on that.
It was interesting actually, because I saw a tweet. I was reading a tweet yesterday or the day before where I don't know whether it was a medical person or a patient, but they had been talking to a GP who said, you know, online stuff is great, but they've had patients say to them, "Oh, I can't stay on this call because I've used up all my data."
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think there are some really practical issues like data, how much it costs, people accessing it, plus the whole issue of rural broadband. You know, it's no good having all this snappy stuff if people can't access it.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely.
And I think those basics, go back to this is new and shiny and exciting. Whereas, you know, we've got to sort out the basics.
It should be standard. There should be, you know, that should have been the first thing really when lockdown happened, that people were made sure they had broadband connectivity and they had the equipment to use it, and then the skills, of course, as well. But, you know, if you give people equipment and the broadband, they would have an incentive then to find out more about it for themselves. And people are cleverer than other clever people think they are. You know, people will work things out. It's good to see that sort of thing happening. We will keep lobbying ourselves for that to happen. We noted one of the last stories we had in our list of stories today was about Stockport reaching 8,000 citizens with a digital skills drive. They established a digital inclusion alliance in 2018 and bringing together the voluntary community sector, because I think that's another thing that local authorities sometimes feel they have to be the ones leading on all this. And in fact, if it's a consortium of, you know, everyone who cares about people in the area, it seems to me it seems to work much better. I think we're coming to the end of our hour together, Shirley. It's been wonderful to have you, and I really have enjoyed and appreciated and learned a lot from what you have to say, and we'll certainly be following up on some of the things you've mentioned. If people want to contact you, are you contactable, or would you prefer to just carry on with the projects you're...
No, I do. Well, I mean, I am on Twitter at Shirley Ayres. And that's probably the way that I connect with most people. I'm one of those strange people who declined. No, I removed myself from WhatsApp because I thought I have all these means of communication, and actually I'm a simple soul. I can't cope with them all. So I've honed it down to...
I'm with you.
That was just one too many for me. I thought, oh dear, I can't cope with it.
Slack as well. Oh my goodness. What? Zoom message? No.
No.
Yet more.
On which no?
Although I was on a call with God, I can't remember the organisation. One of the problems about getting older. It's all in my head, and I can't remember all too much information there. And they were saying that the two most common ways in which groups connect for learning, in their experience, because they were running a session for care home staff, was WhatsApp and on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so there are different ways of, John was a great advocate of Portal. I've not actually ever used Portal, I have to be honest.
We haven't either. We're hoping to get one for demonstration purposes.
But I mean, that bit about the frugal innovation, I think, remains a core part of what we need to be pushing forward.
Yeah.
Because you can get
approach of, use more effectively what you have or what you can easily get.
Yeah, definitely.
It's absolutely
That's a great note. That's a great note to end on. Thanks very much, Shirley. We really appreciate you being on the Dr. Tech show and on Tech Talk in Hope Radio in South Birmingham. Thank you very much. And we'll sign out.
Thank you for inviting
Thank
me.
you.
It's been a very enjoyable way to spend an hour.
Thank you.
There we are. We're off.
Still says live on my screen.
Ooh. Maybe we're off. Hello.